Thank you.
We call the building committee to order.
Okay, I believe we're going to call the building committee to order. We have a quorum. We need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second. The ayes have it. Building committee is now.
Madam Chair, I'll put forward a motion that we adopt the agenda for the concurrent Board of Supervisors special called meeting.
Thank you.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
First item on your agenda is the courthouse renovation of the place.
We have quite a group of people here today. This is the first time, I think this has probably happened since 1834. And the gentlemen justices all assembled to agree to build this building. What we'd like to do for the honorable judges, I think Judge Clements is probably the only one who's actually seen part of our work. We'd like to do a brief presentation, and for explaining the steps and how we got here, I'd like to get committee member Mr. Page Blanning to walk us through it, if that'd be okay with you. And we certainly want questions and input as we go. So we know that that would be very important for what we need to do here. That's okay with y'all. Feel free to ask a question or stop us at any time. Mr. Glennie, if you can work with Mr. Curry here. We'll try.
I'll do it. I can do it, my friend. First slide. Today's objectives are to get input from the principal stakeholders associated with the courthouse. That is the judges and clerks, the sheriff, and the Commonwealth attorney. We want to provide an overview of the overall project, review the efforts and the decisions to date, and review the various, some of the courthouse designs and get your feedback. So as Ron said, feel free to interrupt at any time and ask a question. And we gave you the full size of it. When we get to there, you can actually see it rather than that you're going to be able to see it on the screen. Right? I want to emphasize though on those designs, we are only at the conceptual stage. So we've only done enough design to make sure that it feasibly fits within the volume. Because you know, when you arrange all this stuff and get hallways and stuff, it's hard. So we want to make sure that the relative size, feasibility, and the location of where we're going to do it, that's really all the next phase will be to hire an architect to do the more detailed design. And again, as I'll mention later, we will interact with this group on a repeated basis by each design folks. All right, next slide. This is a very challenging project. It's very complex. This complex has been left kind of untouched for a long time. So bringing the courthouse up to current standards, Dale and I have been going to other courthouses, kind of surprised how far behind we are. Following the best practices for historic restoration. When we do work on this work, it's going to be very noisy. And so we're going to have to work around court time and everything else and relocate other functions when they get to the very noisy part. And then we'll have reallocating, renovating, and repurposing a lot of all the spaces. Much of the public is very fond of this complex. And much of the public is unaware of the extent the existing courthouse is behind standards. So that creates a lot of very difficult political decisions for the board. Next slide. Guiding principles that we are following are to preserve, I won't list them all the buildings here in the complex. All right. Use the Department of Interior standards for historic preservation. all right? Follow a long-term approach to minimize life cycle costs. What a lot of people don't understand, new construction will not last as long as this building has. It just does, the materials aren't the same, they just don't last that long. The existing buildings must be utilized regardless of how we repurpose them. And core operations must remain in the county, all right? Co-location of the county administrative functions back onto the campus and eliminating the rented space across the street and maintaining a look and feel, and as well as having the community gathering area that's outside, which is, I think, very valuable to this community. Next slide. Recapping the efforts to date. We first went through and determined the material condition of the existing buildings. We identified the space needs, obtained the courthouse needs from the judiciary, interviewed county office holders and updated the space needs, investigated adding on to the existing courthouse, vetted an initial courthouse concept with the public. We had a lot of feedback, developed additional courthouse design concepts for review, and recently we've been researching and touring other county courthouses, and we've initiated the acquisition strategy for building restoration on the old jail and the old church, which will be the swing space as we have to renovate other spaces. Next slide. Here are the dates and the actions that we have done so far. In January of 22, we basically got started with a long-term, they wanted a long-term approach. This is the board wanted a long-term approach. The campus concept with the co-location and administrative, eliminate, minimize rented space, and begin building the envelope restoration for the jail. So basically they were approving the principles of the project. In May 2022, we presented a design of modifying this existing courthouse, but we kind of determined it was not a viable option, but we'll go through that today so you can see it. On June 22, we developed additional options for the new courthouse. January 2023, the decision to go with the new courthouse was deferred until it could be staked out with fluid balloons. You could see how high it was going to be. And then in August, this is last August, the space needs were questioned and the new courthouse was questioned, and there was more studies and options requested. Next slide. This is really an overall summary of the space needs. Roughly, the judiciary functions need an additional 10,000 square feet over what is here now. There are multiple security upgrades that I don't want to go through, but I'm pretty sure you all know what they are. The Sally port we're missing and witness and conference rooms are probably the biggest space drivers of that 10,000 square feet. On the county administration side, it also needs about 10,000 square feet. Because the guidelines don't allow the courtroom to be used for the Board of Supervisors, we have to come up with a conference room for them, as well as the Planning Commission and BZA. Relocating the county administration office to the campus, which is over at the visitor center, and eliminating the rented space that's in the Kramer building. The only places where we had any significant increase was the registrar needs, primarily driven by early voting. And the sheriff has some rough order of magnitude. She should be able to fit within the old jail if when we renovate that. The next slide, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but these are the detailed numbers of how that comes out. All right. And again, back there, I will stick with that previous number. I've been in engineering for a long time. At this stage, I just want one digit, the right number of zeros. And so it's 10,000 square feet.
Gage, let me interject and say that this presentation is uploaded to the county's board docs website. So if you do want to look at the detailed numbers, they are there for you to look at.
There's also reports on the website with all the details of that. The options we considered, we did multiple courthouse concept designs. as I said, to ascertain the feasibility and the size and the location. We looked at a separate courthouse building, approximately 20,000 square feet. That included all the functions, the clerk of the court, which is currently next door, and a Commonwealth attorney across the street. All right. I'll show you options 2 and 6 in a minute here to reflect that. As I said, we also looked at adding on to the back of the courthouse. In that case, we only incorporated the functions that's in the courthouse now and increasing the space required for that. It requires relocation of court functions. We originally said 1 to 2 years. After looking at other courthouse projects, I think that was a little underestimated. But anyway, it is what it is, or will be what it'll be. Requires an additional building for the county administration. By not moving the clerk and the Commonwealth attorney into the new building, we don't free up other space to move all those other functions in. And I'll present that a little bit in the coming up in a few minutes. We also just very generally looked at adding a gigantic big 20,000 square foot building back behind that tied all these together. Again, it requires the court to relocate and there's a significant impact to the look and feel of the historic complex. One difference that a lot of people don't understand that Dale and I now do from viewing these other courthouses is all the other courthouses that did additions to their existing one already had a second courtroom to work in, like Madison's was across the street. All right. In the case of Nelson County, they stayed in the old one and the 2 new ones were quite a ways away and they could integrate the construction later. But if you look at those counties that only have 1 courtroom and only need 1 courtroom, virtually every one of them has built a new courthouse. The house, they couldn't deal with the moving court. All right, the option 2, this is the site plan. You can, you're familiar with it. Easier for me to point. This would be the new courthouse. This is Casey out here. This is the old courthouse. We build a new road coming in this way, and this building faces this way. And we'll go through that floor plan in the next slide, which is this, right? What you will see in this arrangement is you have a Sally Port, and that going up direction is facing Warren Avenue that way. So as you're coming in that road, you'll be looking at the front, which is the top side of this plan. Okay? So in both this and the next option, the court is on the top floor with the Sally Port and the judge's entrance and a separate judge's entrance in the back, which would come in from the parking lot behind the courthouse and by the sheriff's office. And all the concept, on both of these concepts, that parking area back there becomes restricted to authorized vehicles only. Now, how far we go to prevent other people coming in, one of those massive gates that will stop a truck, that's to be determined. The lower floor has the clerk of the court and a Commonwealth attorney. Some features about this, which is standard, there's 2 conference rooms. This one has 2 witness rooms. You can see the separate paths going around for the bailiff and the jury's over here to the right and the judge is kind of in the center of the back of the building. Any questions? Thought? I'm sure you'll have some later. Okay. Next slide. This is what that building looks like, looking from behind the old church. These are the four elevations. You noted, I want to note this one in the bottom left-hand corner, coming from Avon Hall, there's a retaining wall. All right, so nothing is getting close to the building. So this is the other option we designed. Again, it still has that same road coming in from Grand Avenue. It's basically the same location, but a different exterior in here, slightly different. All right, and you can see that, as I was talking about before, that big parking area back there where the retaining wall. So this case, this is the Sally Port here, judge's parking is right there, judge's door is here. So from a blast standpoint, years of designing aircraft carriers, you were way out of the blast radius back in this corner. Right, next slide is the floor plan. In this case, again, you see the Sally Port and the judge's entrance. Again, the clerk of the court and the Commonwealth attorney are on the lower floor. One difference with this one, it only has one witness room. Again, if you want to, like that, that's within the level of concept design here. Again, the flow is here. So for example, just like in the other one, if there is an issue with security, this is the sheriff's entrance, the bailiff or anyone can respond with additional help. If people come in this way, go through security, once they get into the courtroom.
Levels below grade as well?
What?
Are there levels planned below grade?
Yes, it's the second, go to the next slide. Thank you, Mr. Segway. All right. You see, this is the perspective. You see that most of the lower level is below grade. We did that trying to push the building down as far as possible so that it did not impact the view from Gay Street. That was one of our primary designs. If you're walking down Gay Street, one of the historic characters is you don't want your new building dominating the old buildings. So we brought over some of the design features in the older buildings, and you see that top semicircle, for example, and we push the building down to keep it down, right? So it's not as dominant over the other buildings. Did that answer your question?
Now, yes.
Okay. Now, next slide. Here are the various elevations. Again, looking from Gay Street, you see how it really is not that much taller than the treasurer's office in the foreground, all right? And then we didn't get this far in doing this option, but we probably would put a retaining wall around the back of the building just to give distance off of for anyone driving up, because you could drive a truck up into that grass. And you see the Sally Port on the lower right-hand corner. The door on the right is for the judge, the door on the left is for the sheriff. And so, basically the sheriff just runs down the parking lot, and she's and her deputies are in the building. Next slide, can you run we came up with a 3D tour of this option. One point is there would be ballards on that front thing to keep vehicles away from the front door. You can see here again how the lower level is cut into the bank. Where that top peak is, that is the cathedral ceiling of the courthouse, and it's got windows along the sides, so you get a lot of light coming in from above. So it's a story and a half, two-story courtroom. And solar panels on the roof. What?
Didn't get all the way around. Something suggested. Right, so it wasn't all the way around.
You think so?
Yeah.
And what's your, the public?
Along, on the site plan, the road coming in from right there. There's parking here, and there's ADA parking here, plus we still have what's on Gay Street.
We envision tying the walk system together so you actually have handicap sidewalk accessible as well.
Yeah, there was on the, sorry, go back to site plan. Yeah, these yellow are the ADA sidewalks, to get to all the buildings. That was harder than you think to keep the ramps at the right angle so they don't get too steep. Option B. All right, here the orange is, dark orange is the existing courthouse, and you see the light orange is the addition that had to be in the back. That green volume is the building that would have to be built to house the county administrating and the other functions, and the conference room for the board of supervisors. This, just as shown in other courthouses that have had to add on, you get, next slide, you get a number of inefficiencies. All right, so for example, where the options 2 and 6 only needed one elevator, this needs 2. So you don't have, this one I don't think this one doesn't even have a witness waiting room, so we got this, thought it was pretty hard, we didn't go too much. But you see basically on this design over here, this is the existing courtroom with the benches here, judge's chamber, so that becomes an elevator, that becomes a stairwell, and the bench is over there looking this way. Then you have judge's chambers back here, jury room, lower level is where the conference rooms are. And the Sally Port is all the way down here, the fire elevator comes up 2 floors. And just like Madison has to do with their elevator, you have to have special cat cars depending on which door of the elevator opens up, which they have technical problems with. Next slide. This was the impacts of doing the existing courthouse going on. As I said, it's going to take quite a while. Whether or not it can be court can be accommodated somewhere else, or the costs are unknown. I'm sure the sheriff would want more staff if she has to support court in another county. There's underground utilities behind the courthouse that adds expense. Modifying an existing building of this nature adds a whole lot of unknown, both schedule and cost. And as I said before, it creates a lot of inefficiencies and design compromises. You see that a lot in Madison, for example. They'll have to compromise a number of different things to work with the existing courthouse. And it impacts the schedule of the envelope presentation, preservation, excuse me. The loss of benefits of the combined court, clerk, and commonwealth attorney, shared security, for example. And then, as I said, if the campus requirement is done, we still need another big structure. All right. Last slide. What we really would like today from the judicial community is, are we missing anything? How frequently should we engage you? We envision that each design phase we would get through, we do this, another session like this. Should we focus on a separate building, or should we continue to explore modifying the existing courthouse? And then the hard question is, how aggressive do you want us to be about it?
So without putting the judges on the spot,
Which I just did.
we really do need your full input. Maybe not today, but very soon. We can have your input on. You're the ones that have to work here.
Jump in. It's all right. Stand next to the sheriff. Well, first of all, Madam Chair, members of the board, and members of the building committee, thank you for inviting me. I'm Doug Fleming. I'm the current as the Chief Judge of the Circuit Court. The Judge Cup is here, Judge Clements, the Court of Appeals. I wanted to say a couple of things right off the bat. My comments are my comments. I have 4 colleagues in the circuit court. Our circuit is a judge of 5 full-time judges. I think that this has been explained, I think, accurately. This is conceptual. So as it moves forward, we will certainly be willing to be involved in any meaningful ways we can, but as it moves forward, we may have more of us show up at certain intervals. But so I want to be clear, I'm speaking for myself. I think fairly comfortably what I'm going to say will probably be supported by my circuit court colleagues. That being said, our district and juvenile domestic relations court judges are certainly equal stakeholders, as is the clerk, Mr. Goff, the sheriff. These are buildings that we spend the great bulk of our time in. So I just want to thank you for the invitation, number one. Number two, not that you need this, but I think when credit is due, it should be given. I wanted to give all of you credit for your foresight and your commitment to take on something that is, in my opinion, very necessary. Courts are unique. Court buildings are unique in our Commonwealth, and I know because of all of it, this represents countless hours, I understand, so you all have been at this for a long time. It's very clear. It's hard work. Some of the things that I'm going to distill this down really. I only have one ask among all of this because I don't try to be what I'm not. I'm not an engineer, and I'm not allowed to do that. I'm a judge. So I'll lead with my chin. I would seriously urge you to consider, if you're going to build a courthouse, put 2 courtrooms in it. And here's why I say that. I'm 41 years into this now. So in Loudoun County, I've been through two complete cycles of this. 2 fairly massive building endeavors. The second one, the county is cutting the ribbon on October 25th. This is not being critical to those efforts. because they were wonderful efforts and the legal community was very grateful and it was necessary. And nobody knows how necessary they were any more than Judge Clemens, who sat at the trailer and tried to conduct court in Loudoun County, mind you, which was extremely challenging. But the point I want to make, both of those buildings were too small when they opened. I got a call from the county administrator a year ago for a building, a courthouse building that's going to be, we're going to cut the ribbon on October 25th. And I don't know how many people know this, but I guess you'll know it now. They said, Judge, we need your opinion on something. And I said, what's that? We need your opinion of who we are going to kick out of this building. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, you know, we designed it with the court and all of these offices to occupy. We can't fit them all in. It's too small. I demurred. I said, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot line. It's not my job to tell you to kick out. Right? I'm a judge. So I didn't weigh in on that. But if you can benefit from your sister county's experiences, I'm not saying they made a mistake. I'm just saying when you're building something, to your point, given the time it takes to plan it, conceive of it, design it, and actually construct it, it takes a while. And even, again, my own opinion, even if Rappahannock County does not grow by one citizen, I know that you all know this, the jurisdictions around you are growing. And I think, not to put Mr. Goff on the spot, but he may amend this, my perception just from the criminal docket here is the majority of cases of defendants are from outside of Rappahannock County.
Yes, sir.
So my advice is be mindful, not just of the weather, but of the climate around you and deciding what you design. Be mindful that our largest jurisdiction probably had they had it to do over again, where I'm not advocating big buildings or colossal structures, but they were just too small. And so now we have a challenge. Somebody pretty soon is not going to be able to build it. The other reason that I mention this is because, and maybe it really is not so much for the circuit court, but, and I'm treading a little bit on Judge Cupp's, in her yard, so I'll let her get up and speak, including Judge Cupp. If you think I'm all wet, you can say he's all wet. One thing about being a judge is I thought when I became a judge, one side was going to be upset with me no matter what I did, and I soon realized everybody's upset with me. You have to have kind of thick skin, and it's okay if there's disagreement. But the juvenile domestic relations court, because I was a substitute district court judge for 19 and a half years before I took the circuit court, is different. Its needs are different. A lot of the people that come there are smaller. They're juveniles or children. Room configurations are different. And I know I'm calling people out, but I know Ms. Struckman and the clerk of the district court on some occasions have really already had to pull rabbits out of hats to figure out who's going to get to use the room in which we're sitting right now, because various courts wanted/needed it on the same day. And that's not going to get better. It's going to get more challenging. So I really bow low to you for the vision. And I mean that sincerely. But as you start moving from just basic conceptualization, that would be my one big observation is I would advocate for courtrooms. And I don't think you will regret it. I think you're going to, if that happens down the road, you're going to say, wow, I was really smart. And you will be for having to. Beyond that, having said I'm not an engineer, I'm going to tread a little bit into this, but don't know about touching this building right here. I've had this conversation with another jurisdiction, and what little bit of information I got was it's probably going to be more expensive when you're trying to tinker with historical structures, which this one is now. Plus, my opinion, what a charming courthouse. What a charming county you have. The circuit court judges fight each other to come here. It's wonderful. Loudoun County, they have a charming historic courthouse. Warrenton has a charming historic courthouse that the district court sits in that. Not that you have to do what other counties did, but they didn't want to touch it. The Loudoun County Courthouse is mostly ceremonial now. Have investitures and educational programs, occasionally some civil cases. There's no way it can handle criminal cases anymore. It's just not designed for the safety, and it has its challenges. But when we get a chance to show off next week, the Court of Appeals is coming to sit at Loudoun County, the panel of the Court of Appeals. And one individual sitting in this room is going to be on that panel. And it really made me feel good to say, why don't you sit in our ceremonial historic courthouse? And there's something wonderful about it. And that's the way I feel about this building. But as you know, it fails every modern test for security and many other things. So as much as I like coming here, I'll tell you there have been many times when I've stayed in there because I was a little concerned about coming out because of a hearing that I had. And people were out in the yard, and it's okay, but it's just not set up the way a courthouse should be set up. And hence the reason we're having this discussion. But it is charming. It's historic. And I'm sure that there's some legitimate use that can be made of it. But that's just one layperson saying I'd be careful about trying to retrofit this beautiful courthouse building here. It's historic. And anyway, so to summarize, subject to any other stakeholder saying I disagree with him completely, 2 courtrooms is what I would ask that you consider. And I think that in the future, because I'll leave what the elevations and what it looks like and the materials to people who are probably better qualified, except it should, as you know, as you already pointed out, it should capture the dignity and of the surrounding area. It's a courthouse and be compatible, and I'm sure it will be. I'm sure people will be very proud of it. But your legacy is going to be somebody and probably a bunch of people saying, wow, by designing it the way they designed it with having a couple of courtrooms, they didn't just substitute a now historic but largely unworkable courtroom with one other courtroom, because I think it's going to be too small. And then you're going to have that conversation down the road, and it's never an easy one to make because you're stewards of the public works. It's always easier to consider it now than down the road. So that's my pitch. But we're the judges of the circuit court are excited and thankful that you're moving forward with this. And I think it's something that citizens of Rappahannock are proud of, and appreciate you allowing me to speak. Turn it over to Judge Compton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me here today also, and I just want to express my appreciation for all of the work that you have put into this. This is a tremendous amount of work, and it's incredibly thoughtful, and it takes the judiciary's need into consideration, and I appreciate all of the work that you put into it to get to this point. I think your floor plans are shades of really good options. So it's just a question of which one is going to get implemented in terms of building the new building. But this building is, I also don't have the expertise to even begin to think how a building like this is gonna be renovated and still preserve its historic nature. I love this courtroom. I came up as a lawyer in this courtroom, we're one of the only counties that has one table that all counsel have to sit at during trials. It's an amazing room. And so part of me struggles with thinking what it would be like if gutted and just completely remodeled into something else. That's really hard. But I know you all are facing a lot of conflicting needs on that issue. So I don't know that I can give you anything but a personal opinion on that, which is I love this building and I don't want to see anything bad happen to it in this process. But with regard to the places that you requested guidance, I don't see any design issues that are missing in the plans that I've seen. With how frequently I would like to engage, I want to be helpful to you and not a challenge, and not another challenge for you. I want to give you what you need in order to make the process go more smoothly for you. So as often as you want to meet with me, I'd be happy to make myself available to talk to you about what you're looking at. And then the last one is how aggressive should the timeline be? This is the one that is the most important to me because we have had years and years of studies saying that what we're doing now is not safe. And, it's hard to talk about all those details in the public, so we don't want anyone to exploit them, but we all know that this is really unsafe. So something bad might happen, right? So a judge might be hurt or killed, someone's attorney might get attacked, someone coming as a witness in a criminal case might get killed. And if that were to happen, then how aggressive would our timeline be, right? When the bad thing happens, how quickly are we gonna say we have to do something because we know the situation is unsafe and our worst nightmare has just come true. So how aggressive should the timeline be? Why not let's just get there before the bad thing happens and prevent the people from working in this building from being at risk every day, as people in not just our community, but in the wider community have, seems like increasing amounts of animosity towards the judicial system as a representation of our government. It's scary. And so I would urge you to be as aggressive as you can be. I understand you have a big job and a lot of responsibility to the people of this community, and I don't want to see that be rushed to an extreme. But we can't keep doing studies and studies and studies. We have to eventually decide, it might not be perfect, but it's a lot better than what we have now. We just have to go ahead and do it. So that's what I wanted to give you input about, but appreciate you giving me an opportunity to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Excuse me.
I would like to make one brief that in all these designs that appeared that the clerk's office was below grade. Do I have that right?
There's windows. It's not in the it's not in a basement.
But it's perfect.
A little bit, not much.
You can, maybe something that we can consider in the future is that we keep historic records in our office. And we have all the county records back to 1833. Right now, they are in the basement, mostly, of the clerk's office. And even though the mold has been remediated in the past, it's coming back. So it kind of feels like no matter what we do, if we're partially underground, we're going to take on moisture. And just as custodian of the records, I want to point that out there.
That was
Thank you.
noted at Madison Canyon. Their records room is in the old historic, and they have the same water problems, bad gutters, and a sidewalk right up against the building. The brick is soaking up water, and the plaster is falling out on the inside of the records room. And so they have the humidifier running. So they started asking Dale and I more questions than we were asking them. It was kind of interesting. But yes, understand. They also had AFFF or HP, whatever, blah, 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 which I believe your system has been deactivated.
You mean the air?
Phone system.
Oh,
When he toured your offices a long time ago, I saw some of the controls for the phone system, but when I went looking for the phone tank, it ain't there.
oh, no.
So every one of their record rooms, even their general storage, has a phone capability and a panic button if you're in there to hit the phone and run out. So I guess my point is, we're attuned to that issue, all right? Other courthouses had that very same problem, so yes, it would have to have I can't remember which option it was. I think both options 2 and 6 had the records room right by the mechanical room. So that should provide some dryness to it. The mechanical room is the one that's way underground, all right? Your office, where the records are kind of in the middle of it. But yeah, that's a very valid point.
I'm not a stakeholder. But,
Yes, you are.
well, if you get a courtroom that has a bench large enough for 3 judges, I would gladly bring them in with the Court of Appeals here. I'd rather go here than Alexandria, Fairfax, if included. The building, I'm Jeannie Clements, and Madam Chairman, and gentleman chairman, and members of the board, and members of the committee. You've heard from me, both the committee and the board, 7 times. And my real request was involve the stakeholders. And so I appreciate the fact that Mr. Fraser and Mr. Glennie, as I understand it, spoke to the clerk, Caitlin Strutman, and moved this thing forward to the meeting that is occurring today. I think it's wonderful. And I agree with Judge Fleming about one thing, and I've told everyone this: 2 courtrooms. There has to be one that accommodates the jurisdiction, the unique jurisdiction of the juvenile court. And I think that most courts that have the size of Rappahannock or slightly above have 2 and perhaps 3 courtrooms. And it's vision. It's vision, as Judge Fleming says. A little story. 1990, I was a juvenile judge and I sat in Loudoun County. The Supreme Court wanted to implement a family court pilot project. I wanted our juvenile court to be a part of it. But we were not initially selected. In the project, courts were selected as urban courts or rural courts. So I said to my court service unit director, let's get some statistics together so that we can persuade the Supreme Court to let us go into the project as a rural jurisdiction. This is 1990. There were 347 miles of unpaved roads in Loudoun County at that time. And that's the only statistic that I can remember that we gathered. But we gathered the statistics, and it also included how many stoplights there were. I think there was 1 outside of the towns. We were accepted as a rural court in that project. In 2020, population statistics for the Commonwealth of Virginia, Loudoun County is now the 3rd largest county in population in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And as Judge Fleming said, he's had, and I went through it 3 times, he's gone through it twice in Loudoun. So we have a golden opportunity to really do it right here, because we have the opportunity to start fresh. And everyone's talked about the need, I don't need to repeat that. But I want you to have vision. Don't just look at what the statistics are today. Have some vision, because we don't want to regret it, and we have the opportunity to do it really well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
to bounce off what Judge Fleming and Judge Clement said, Rappahannock isn't growing, and it may not. But as Judge Fleming said, our surrounding jurisdictions are. Most of the people that we deal with here in court are people from other jurisdictions. Security is terrible. Today, we had 7 inmates over here, and we also had people sitting on the benches. We're walking inmates in and out of here with who knows who. That's a security issue. The judges, if something goes wrong in this courtroom, the judges are confined to these little rooms, which there's no escape from there. Security is a nightmare. We have a lot of movement in this courtroom while court's going on, because attorneys have to come and speak to their clients. We can't stop that because they have that right. There's a lot of movement. We have inmates that are walking directly behind the Commonwealth attorney that are sitting 3 or 4 feet from the judge. It takes a lot of manpower to be over here when we have a court day like today, and we've been going since 9 this morning. We finished up 5 minutes before this meeting. So security is a nightmare, and it's only going to get worse because we're dealing with a different group of people. And it's not the old Rappahannock people, it's people from outside of this jurisdiction that are coming through here that we are arresting. They're coming through here, they're committing crimes that we're having to do our jobs and take care of, and then they're coming over here and sitting in this courtroom, which is not as secure as it should be. The judges need to feel safe. Witnesses need to feel safe. Mr. Goff has heard me say it a few years ago. We had a murder here in the county where it almost was a mistrial. We had Commonwealth's witnesses, defense witnesses, families from the deceased individual, and the family from the defendant. They were all downstairs, intermingling with our jurors. There were comments that were made. It almost was a mistrial. It took a lot of time. I had to go. I had to interview every juror to find out what they had heard, what they hadn't heard. The family members were upset. They were speaking out loud. So, it's too late after you have a mistrial because of a spontaneous utterance. So we need the space to have the Commonwealth's witnesses in an area, the defense witnesses in an area, and our jurors need to feel safe when they're subpoenaed to be here also. So security is a nightmare. Something needs to be done. That's up to you guys, but that's my opinion.
I want to say to the building committee, Mr. Fraser, that I was the first idiot to stand up and speak on the microphone on what a good job you did on the first iteration of this, and I meant it. You guys have worked really hard, and it's super. And I think you understand what every one of the stakeholders is saying, and that is safety, safety, safety. And I agree with the vision aspect of it. We need 2 courtrooms. You got a couple things going on. First of all, sometimes we have to interview little people through a television system, and we need a place to put them. Right now, there's wires all over Donna's office when the state police come with the remote video system for Judge Cupp's court. They're mainly little people. So we need a safe thing for that. Another courtroom would be ideal. 2, there's a thing called speedy trial. And if we can't give somebody a trial within a certain statutory time frame, we lose that case. Society loses that case over time. So it's often will be a blessing going forward if we can have simultaneous courts, if we can have motions and non-jury issues adjudicated by a second circuit court judge, then that increases the flexibility of the court. Of course, she's going to need another person in her office to run that courtroom. Seriously. But that's, if you don't want to lose things like on speedy trial, this is what we have to look forward to. The incidence of crime is definitely on the rise, and they are from out of here. It's not from Rappahannock County. But at the same time, we should look into the future as far as we can and say, let's make it as flexible as we can. Flexible. Bearing in mind, what Sheriff Compton just talked about. Safety requires, and this is also a due process aspect of it, those jurors got to be kept away from these witnesses. That is such a nightmare. It is unbelievable. A Randy Smoot trial that she was talking about, it's a perfect example of what not to do. You have jurors down there yakking, talking to the witnesses in the case before the evidence is heard. That's a no-no. You can't have that and have a competent system of justice. So those jurors have to have their own way in and out of here. The judges have to have security. They have to. They're sitting ducks, so they need to be protected. That means separate entrances, separate exits with safety in mind. The witnesses oftentimes are from two camps who hate each other, and they won't get along, and that causes a safety problem too. So you have to bear that in mind. The look of a courthouse aesthetically, well, that's not for me to judge. What I'm concerned about is, are those jurors going in and out separately and safely? Are those witnesses being kept apart? Keep them separated. And are the judges getting in and out of here safely? Is there adequate security, room for security apparatus so the sheriff can make sure whoever's coming in here is unarmed? I'm content to stay across the street. You don't have to worry about me. If you need more space, I'm not being very visionary for my successor in office, but the key thing is that not offices for the Commonwealth's attorney. And the clerks have to be in here because modern technology, they got to be right there. And the clerks of the circuit court and the district courts have to be in here. But to increase flexibility, you can take my outfit and leave us over in the old fire hall. To make sure that we have the room and the space to keep the witnesses and everybody else separated. So that's all I have to say. And I still want to say you guys have done a lot of work, and it's been thoughtful. It's been fruitful. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
On the time frame of the refurbishment versus building new construction. Do you have any sense of the difference in timing?
It would take much longer to add on to this building than to build a new building.
But again, back to the first slide about the complexity. One of the advantages of a separate building is it decouples a whole bunch of stuff in this project. All right. So for example, refurbishing that church gives swing space for the other little buildings, like the treasurer's office, whatever. Building the new building and getting that done quickly frees up, assuming we leave you in the building, and the clerks frees up those two buildings to start that work. So the new building has a far simpler domino effect space, right? Far easier to integrate, and when you add in the noise of what it's going to take for the historic restoration, that's even more important.
May I add another question? I know nothing about building the courthouse, but in listening to this and just from my knowledge in the universe, even though you have two courthouses, isn't it possible at one time one courtroom would be shut down for some reasons like repairs, modifications? I mean, you watch enough TV, the courtrooms are always being shut down to be swept or whatever. Is two courtrooms enough? You need one that's specifically like for juvenile, one for traffic and one for whatever the others, Are you getting what I'm saying?
Again, what we've seen from the other courthouses, the repair issues are not, or painting the inside of the courtroom is not that big a deal. Because they'll share the other courtroom and most of them have three, right? For example, when Madison added on, they had the original courthouse, they added on the judicial in the back, underground. While they were doing that, they moved the circuit court into the district court across the street, right? And so you can do that, all right? So if you have multiple, I think two would be more than enough to be able to flop to repaint the courtroom or something like that. That answers your question. I don't foresee a large amount of maintenance having to go into a courtroom. Right.
You know, you always have to have those folks to go. So if having two or three, even three, seems to be more adequate instead of.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, I think we could probably get by with two. I'd like to open it up now to other board members who'd like to make comments or ask questions.
Well, I would just like to thank these judges and the clerk and Mr. Goff for coming and speaking with us today. And the sheriff, thank you. Thank you, Sheriff. I think that this kind of meeting has been a long time coming, so I thank you, Judge Clements, for bringing it up and sort of at the last meeting. And I just wanted to say that I hear what you're saying, and I could not agree more with the safety aspect and the vision aspect. We are in a beautiful place, but there's a lot more people around us now. So I'd just like to thank you, and I'd like to thank the building committee for pulling and doing so much work to put all this together. Thank you, Paige, for presenting this today. From the beginning of this discussion that I have been involved with, I've only been on the board, this is my second year. I got my driver's license in this room, and I love this courthouse. And I agree that, you know, we want to protect and preserve the dignity and the elegance of this building. And I have thought that from the beginning, and so I absolutely agree with that. I just can't thank you all enough for sharing your thoughts with us today. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
And I just want to say thank you as well. And one thing I heard from Judge Fleming was there are some lessons learned from surrounding counties. And I don't know how we gather that information so that we're not going to repeat something that they've already learned the hard way, I think would be very beneficial. The two courtrooms, I think we've decided that's a must, hearing from everybody today. I like that Mr. Goff has given his space up if it's needed, since he is just right next door. So I think we've got a bit more direction. I would like to see us involve the stakeholders more frequently, I think. I feel like this is the first time, maybe the second, that I've been in a meeting that I don't know that I've ever been in without judges. And I know you guys have been working hard for 2 years, so trying to make sure that we're getting feedback from everyone frequently so that we're not missing a step. Obviously, the dollar amount is going to be paramount to everyone, but we've got to make sure that the safety and the communication and whatever else is needed, that's going to be the expensive part other than brick and roofs, is taken care of. And if it takes 30 years to pay it off, it takes 30 years to pay it off. We just got to think forward. And what I read in the documents from the state is it's basically a 20-year vision. And I don't know that we have, maybe we do, the people available to actually be able to be a visionary for Rappahannock County and think 20 years out. But there's companies, I'm sure, that has that ability and has done that for other counties. So I would just like to stay engaged, at least with the building committee and the judges, or a judge assigned by Chief Circuit Court Judge, to make sure that we're hearing what we need to hear before we start.
Chair, just appreciate Mr. Goff, serving himself up as a sacrificial lamb. and I don't know this, I have a copy, but I haven't committed them to memory. I don't know if the OES facilities guidelines recommends Commonwealth's Attorney's Office be incorporated into the courthouse. I know in the last, and this is not necessarily, the be all and end all, but I know that in Loudon's last iteration, they incorporated the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office into the courthouse, where heretofore they were in a standalone building. But every comment that was made about safety by the sheriff and by Judge Cupp, and I think I alluded to it, applies equally, if not more so, to representatives of the Commonwealth. Because when you think about it, they are representing the Commonwealth in criminal cases primarily, almost exclusively. And have them having to access the courthouse across lawns and streets and just never know who you're going to congeal, come into contact with. And so I don't want it to be forgotten that ideally, in my opinion, you should consider incorporating the Office of the Commonwealth's Attorney into that courthouse so they can access courtrooms without always having to be out in the public, which is not always a safe place to be. So Mr. Goff was just being a team player, and I think we all appreciate that. But I don't want to forget his office's security, along with security.
To answer your point, rising number is a should, not a shall.
Sure.
All right, and let's see, Madison County, his Commonwealth attorney is in a building in a short walk across that parking lot, get in. In Nelson County, he's inside the security envelope in a separate, that's hard to say, it's a separate building, but his door and after the security's control. And that's another thing in both of those counties that maybe you can comment on this too, is we looked at the clerk's office that they would have access, people would have access to get to the land records without having to go through security. That is not the case, well, that is the case in Madison if court's not in session. If court's in session, then you have to go through the security. In Nelson, they're having to staff their security at the door all the time. The building's open, there's a deputy sitting at the door. And that's county administration, school board, everything is behind that security. All right. So the question that where I'm going was having public access to the records, public records, is that need to be behind the security all the time?
I can't answer that question without knowing more about the particular building that.
Well, as we designed it, the court session upstairs you would not be able to get there. There would be locked doors if the court wasn't in session. But Madison County had a thing where the alarm goes and they forgot to lock the door, all right? Some lawyer came in, accessed the land records, the alarm was going off, she continues to work, the sheriff comes running in, dealing with it, so.
Well, let me start, just kind of as a baseline. The chief judges and the sheriff are responsible for the security of the courthouse. If that building has a courtroom, the entire building is a courthouse. The Attorney General's opinion on that, right? That being said, the chief judges and the sheriff, they fashion a courthouse security order. I think it's appropriate. So, if there was no conceivable way that a person could get from the record room to any other part of the building, perhaps, and that would then just be a question of whether that would be wise or some of the other buildings. And again, I'm not pulling anybody out. Critical, I'll just use an example. Stay in my own circuit, Faulkner County. I entered in an order not long ago, it wasn't very popular with some people, it's a courthouse security order. It was a very standard order, Faulkner had never had one. They have 2 constitutional offices in that building. And the people were not happy that they couldn't come in with sidearms, but to go to the treasurer's office, Commissioner of Revenue, and one of the things in my security order is no firearms in the courthouse. They said, well, it's not the courthouse, it's the Commissioner of Revenue's office. I said, no, it's courthouse. But they're only going to floor 3. And floor 4, in the courthouse floor, they would have to access security queues. That was true. But to access the 3rd floor, you could come out the 3rd floor, and I think frankly you have to because of ADA. You can't make everybody ride in an elevator. Some people have claustrophobia and need accommodation. So that building, you could access the stairwell. Little known fact, I don't ride elevators. So during my entire tenure, I've lost track of how many hundreds of stair flights, and I'm glad to walk them. But when I go to Fauquier, I encounter people all the time. And I'm in my robe going from the 4th floor to the 1st floor, and in the 2nd and 3rd floors, I meet people that's, at least now I know they're not all. But before that, I wasn't so sure. And that wasn't the reason for the courthouse order, but it makes the point that you have to really focus on the building and the access points. And where can people come in and go out of? So the deputy there that's going to be monitoring that or not. Sometimes people will put in side doors for other people. That, because we have some buildings that we don't have a security queue in the door. So if you have somebody that has credentials and they're opening the door, and the person behind, oh, I forgot my credentials, can I come in? Some people just, it's their name, they just want to help. Oh, sure. But they don't really know who that person is. Anyway, you get the point. Maybe, the answer's maybe. If you're asking me for this building, what I would think, again, I can only ask the question. If I'm still chief judge, I would get with the chief judge of the General District Court, the chief judge of the Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court, the sheriff department, and either a physical meeting or get them on a conference call and say, let's talk this through. What do you all think? What would you advise? Try to come up with a consensus that we think would be fair.
I would like to say, I appreciate Mr. Goff offering up your office, but we thought we'd put you in that building for 2 reasons. One is security, and 2, we need the space. We need that building. So simply leaving Mr. Goff over there, it doesn't really free up any space, because if we don't build space here, we're gonna need an admin building. We're just going right back to that problem again. So what we've done is we found out that the courthouse probably should be about 3,000 square feet larger for another courtroom. And we still need that building over there for future rights. And if I could, the last official vote of this board was that we continue looking at a separate building. Is that the consensus of this board today? Because there's no point in us going anywhere further from today unless we know what we're doing. That's where we are. Is it a separate building, or do we look at encumbering this building with a large addition? There's only 2 ways to go. Our building committee needs direction from this board. The last official vote was keep going with the separate building.
I think my point was at the last meeting that I think we need to, I agree with the judges here that we need to move in a direction. And I think my point at the last meeting was is that it would be due diligence for us to look at maybe some more options in terms of how it's set up. If we're going to be incorporating another courtroom, that just involves a lot of stuff. And so, and my point was last meeting, it's not so much about, is it standalone or is it attached? That applies to what's sitting in front of us. I think the directive that we have is that we need to make this thing safe, and we need to make it safe soon, quickly.
Quickest
So-
way to do that is with the new building.
And you're right, it could be, absolutely.
That's gonna be the quickest and cheapest.
And I think what I was just suggesting last time is that perhaps it would benefit us to just look at another option or two.
Well,
And,
Mr.
anyway, that was.
Curry, could you please discuss our Wiley Wilson contract that has expired? And so we don't necessarily have.
Well, we had them under contract for several years for basic services, different tasks, and one of them was this pre-planning work. Whenever we are going to advance to actual building, design, et cetera, we'll need to have some competitive procurement to select design professionals.
That's not what I was going. You're right, I absolutely agree. If we were heading off to design a new courthouse, it's a new contract. What I'm saying is, we don't currently have a services contract that we can pursue other options like we did with Wiley Wilson.
But Wiley Wilson could do some more if we gave him more scope, but no,
We could, so
I think through February.
we could add more scope to that contract if we
Yeah.
need to. Okay.
I'll hijack things for just a second. I have a question relative to the second courtroom while I have the captive audience. Are we thinking full courtroom, gallery, jury, or hearing room that would be tailored for JDR type offense?
My position on that is, first of all, I don't like the choice of the word, hearing room.
Okay,
The juvenile court would not be a large, full-scale courtroom like the circuit court. It never was intended to be that way. But please don't call it a hearing room. It's a courtroom. And the courtroom itself would be small because you have only a few people in there at one time. But the waiting area has to be large because everybody else has to be outside the courtroom until his or her case is heard. And I'm sorry, don't mean to be stepping on Judge Cobb's toes. She's the current juvenile thing, but I've spent 16 years in the juvenile, so I do have some awareness of what jurisdiction and how it functions.
Your point is exactly right. Madison County's juvenile courtroom is small, and they have a major problem with the waiting room being way too small. All right, and that's another inefficiency because of where they designed. They got this big conference room back behind that's rarely even used. But anyway, we got that point in there.
What you save on courtroom, you make up for in waiting and meeting rooms.
I agree with what it said on behalf of the juvenile court right now. A small courtroom would work fine. It can't be too small though, because sometimes you have, let's say a social services case that involves 6 kids with several parents. You've got several parents and several lawyers. And it turns out to be 15 people. So it can't be too small. And also, a lot of times you have people in the waiting room or people on the opposite sides of protective orders, family abuse protective orders. So it is nice when you can have one in one waiting room, even if it's small, and another, but another waiting room to keep them separated so that you don't have the risk of intimidation or harm.
I'll add one thing, just to phrase the question, and this is, so that Judge Cobb again, speaking from the perspective of the Juvenile Domestic Relations Court. You're going to have a separate courtroom, amen, what Judge Clement and Judge Cobb said. But I'll make this observation, and this is for the designers. You can have a smaller courtroom and put a jury box in it. And for my money, why wouldn't you? Because we have a very small courtroom in Loudoun County. Of course, we have 6 courtrooms in Loudoun County, but one of them's really small. call it, it's a small world, it's really small. But it has a jury box. And so we've been able to hold jury trials for motor vehicle accidents.
Probably bigger than this room.
No.
Oh, it's not,
Much smaller. But my point is, totally unsuitable for a criminal trial, totally unsuitable for most civil cases. But for certain cases, we can use it and have used it before. So if you could configure a jury box, conceivably then Judge Cupstock using it for juvenile court, and we have a criminal docket in one courtroom, even a criminal jury trial in one courtroom, we could have a civil jury trial in the other courtroom. And we have 5 judges, we're all circuit riding judges, and we designed our dockets so that we try as best we can to be flexible. We still rely upon retired recall judges, but many times we deploy 2 judges to fall here, but they only have 2 courtrooms, so they have sometimes the need for that. But in the circumstances, looking again, talking about vision, here, if you had 2 courtrooms, you had a jury box, you could have 2 jury trials, because populated with the judges necessary to do that. So again, that jury box may sit empty a lot of times, or maybe lawyers sit in the jury box. If the spillover seating is heard sometimes in Loudon and Fauquier, but it's there. And down the road, I think you'd be glad you did it that way.
So set them both up, at least rudimentary in those smaller one for jury trial. So for example, Madison's got a separate set of holding cells in the lower level with the judicial one. So they can use that lower cell, the lower courtroom for a jury trial.
I think you can design a courtroom that would be most suitable for juvenile domestic relations system court, but it could also be used for the circuit court if necessary. But that jury box could definitely be used, because then there are certain cases we could try.
Back to the flexibility.
Correct.
Sir, we didn't lock visiting these other, very bad. We didn't lock visiting other courthouses. Yeah. It was very
A lot of lessons learned.
loud. What do you want to do?
Huge mistake in Payne County. They had that big, beautiful general district courtroom, and I know Judge Cuff's been over there a lot, because I spent a lot of my life over there. Huge, big room, bigger than this almost, and they didn't put a jury box in it, and then the first 2 months out, we needed a jury, because it just got to be, one year, I think me and Jack had like 714 different defendants one year. And so to have that second jury option, it doesn't have to be huge. And the judge is quite right. You can also have their civil juries in there too. They're smaller. You have 12 people. There's 10 juries. Yeah. So what's that cost to put up a jury box in the grand scheme of things? It's peanuts, right? So why not do it?
Once you've crossed the bridge of the second courtroom, pretty much this.
I think
It's
it'd
the
be
square
foolish
footage.
not.
You got the square footage, the rest of it's just.
I mean, depends on if you can
Well, that's what they've done.
double, if you can double up on holding cells and things like that in conference rooms.
Well, I don't understand why you couldn't have even like smaller holding cells, both of which were connected to both courtrooms.
Yeah,
So most time you might be empty, but or do double duty.
well, again, that's what Madison does, so the elevator back in the back, can move them if they need 6 holding cells for circuit court upstairs, they got 3 downstairs, 3 upstairs, or they can move them back and forth, right? They can balance in the holding area with the bailiffs is totally separate from the rest of the courthouse.
So what's the next course of that?
Mr. Fender, I think
Sorry,
it's your
I
meeting.
didn't actually hear your question.
I'm sorry?
I didn't actually hear your question.
I said, what's the next course of action for this committee?
We're waiting on the board's direction.
We're ready to do.
The rest of the board of supervisors, there's two members of the board on the committee, and and the rest of the committee, we're actually of the opinion, and have been of the opinion for the last year and a half, because that's what the board voted on, that we move forward with looking at a separate building. But a month ago, we did a bad on that, so the board has to determine where we're going.
So how can we impact you, a citizen?
Point of order, is this a meeting just for stakeholders and you all, or is it something you try to talk?
Well, it's mostly for stakeholders, and we're allowing people to vote. You have a question?
I suspect that many people here would like to either make statements or raise questions.
Well, at first off, we have to be germane to what we're talking about today. So it has to be about the courthouse, facility, expansion of this, and a new building. So they would have to be along that. So if you have a question or a comment.
I do have a question. My comment would be that, that preserving this building is not just a matter of elegance and historic character, that this building needs to continue to have a life. And that
That's all we've been putting.
okay. And I think it's
This building was going to be repurposed.
okay. Good. I think we all understand that this building continue to be used in some significant way and not be relegated just to ceremony and purpose. So
The board of supervisors, thank the DZA, as Mr. Rennie pointed out earlier in the program, we have to have a place to meet.
yeah.
And if we are not allowed to use this courtroom or any version of the courtroom later on, you've got to have a place to meet. So that's why we envisioned a separate building with the courtrooms. This building would be remodeled and repurposed, and would probably be a meeting room upstairs for the board of supervisors, the planning commission, BZA, those functions, and downstairs would be other building, other county.
So I think that would reflect a very
That can happen without any major damage done to this building as far as.
And then the other point of it, the question of raised is option B, has that really been thought through, as extensively or as carefully as I can? So the option B is it's currently configured, this is building straight out of the building.
It would be this size building all the way back to the edge of the building.
But it could be, for example, it could be rotated 90 degrees and be a more spacious building. It could still be connected in some way. It could be set back some distance, but still connected to this building in some way with a single security entrance. So I think option B, I would encourage the supervisors to see this idea.
I would prevent option B requires the county to build more office space. And you're not going to get out of building as much space. You're going to build it, you're either going to have dedicated court and dedicated county space, or you're going to repurpose what we have now and have dedicated court space. You're not getting out of building buildings.
And that's, that's what he's saying. Second.
Well, I think I know what he's saying. You go, you can get what? Well, no, because we're getting off track. We don't have 20,000 square feet and building.
Mr.
So if you build a new building over here, or an addition here, if the addition is not large enough to take and move all the court functions into it, including the common area, the clerk's office, you're gonna have to build a separate building over here somewhere for county functions.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, could I make a suggestion? We have our judges here. We've gotten input from them. Obviously, the public is interested now that we have that input. I'm sure it will be widely reported on. Could we come back at a later date and set a proper public comment period
when the judges don't have to.
You're right.
I think it would just be better than diving into this with whoever happens to be here today.
Thank you.
But I think the public certainly deserves a chance to weigh in now that we've heard from the judges.
The public has heard so much misinformation.
I understand. I'm just
That's
suggesting,
why.
right, I'm just suggesting for transparency and openness for the community that we schedule a later date, a time when we can hear from everyone in a proper manner.
There's no public comment, so people
Thank
didn't
you.
come.
I understand. I guess I was looking to get out of hand, but at the same time,
I understand.
people can't leave with misconception. It just gets worse.
Shall we have a joint building committee meeting at the next monthly supervisor meeting so we can continue this?
Sure.
We can do that, but it's gonna, you have to have the same question.
If that's,
And we can take them up that.
We've done that before, and we kind of get the same people coming and commenting.
I think for,
But
yeah, go.
I have a suggestion. Why not do a formal public hearing where it's announced, more people know about it, and we take that process? And that,
Agreed. Yeah.
Well,
There can be a true discussion. That's
whatever the mechanism is, I think it makes good sense. It's a big deal. We've got very important feedback today that I think potentially sends us in a more defined direction when perhaps previously the path was not entirely clear. So whatever mechanism it is, maybe it's just a comment period during our next monthly meeting, and make it clear to the public that it's an opportunity to comment on what work the building committee has done and what our representatives from the judiciary have said in terms of needs. And then we can just hear from the public. It doesn't have to be a back and forth, but let's hear from the public, because no doubt, and I really did have little to say in this regard, but at least the conceptual design of the building as presented, with the exception of only one or two people from whom I've heard, was something that people felt good about. So I think if we are headed in the direction of construction of a new facility, clearly people have concerns about what that facility would look like and how it would be oriented vis-a-vis Courthouse Row in its current form. And so I think it would be important to hear from folks all in one fell swoop and then move forward from there. So I don't think it has to be a formal hearing, but just a public comment period.
That works.
But we've done that twice.
Well, this is such an important issue.
I
think
understand
we need
that,
to
but
do
if we've done that twice and we're at the same spot now, what can more time do? We had one at night.
Well, ultimately, Mr. Frazier, the answer is whatever it takes for the board to coalesce. And so for some, it may take longer. Others might be there now, because of course you and Ms. Smith have been in the weeds.
We gotta rephrase what I'm thinking. What do we have to present differently so that people don't ask the same questions?
Sometimes it's different people, and we'll bring the community along step by step, and before long, the majority of those who are interested will be better informed, and that will make board members more comfortable to make informed decisions.
We've received really important input today from the judges, and it potentially leads us down a certain path. And I think it is a critical time now to give the public a formal, well-noticed opportunity, perhaps 7 p.m. in the evening at one of our upcoming monthly meetings, to weigh in on this, on what was said today, what it means in terms of the overall plan. We're by no means doubting or denigrating the work done today, but I think we owe it to the citizens of Rappahannock County to at least now be able to weigh in, because it appears that we are headed toward some kind of new construction as opposed to a renovation. It sounds like that, and that doesn't.
It's always been a renovation.
I understand. Just if I could just finish. So let's just put something on the books for our next monthly meeting or the monthly meeting after that, and let's just allow the public to comment, and let's listen to them instead of talking.
Mr. Frazier.
Excuse me. The board is trying to talk right now.
Sorry?
The board is trying to discuss what we're gonna do next.
So I would just put forward a motion that at our October regular monthly meeting during the 7 p.m. hour, we place on the agenda when it comes out, a public comment period, and that we advertise that through our normal mechanism, and I'm sure it'll be well reported. We invite the public to come and comment on the plans as presented and the input we received today from our judges, and let's just hear from them.
Okay.
We have a motion, whoops, we have a motion, we have a second.
Is that a supervisor motion here?
Yeah, it has to.
I'll second that.
Second, discussion. Hearing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Well, very close to that. Get the most of it. If there isn't any other business.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Ron, you need a motion to adjourn?
Mr.
No, yeah, adjourn the building committee.
Building committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.